I was up at sunrise, and the newcomer was sound asleep, so I made my way down to the beach where his raft was. I dragged it deep into the undergrowth and covered it with greenery, then returned to the same spot and threw down my pouch that contained my flint and steel. I then scurried back up to where the man was. He had risen and was drinking from the gully. Once he had had his fill, I followed him with mounting curiosity as he sauntered down to the beach. He strutted onto the sand, then came to a sudden halt, gazing around, looking quite aghast, as he had obviously realised that his raft was no longer there. I looked on with further, and after a minute or so he sank to his knees, bellowing and cursing like a lunatic. He then began to walk towards the water's edge. I was completely engrossed. So much so that at one stage I inadvertently stood up from behind the rock I was hiding behind. He must have seen me or something, for he stopped in his tracks and was soon walking over to where I was concealed. I had ducked quickly and had stealthily edged back into the undergrowth, where I continued to observe. He stood motionless, looking quite perplexed as he stared down at the sand. I clenched my fist in delight. He had seen the pouch. He picked it up and emptied the contents into his hands. By the look of marvel on his face and the change in his demeanour, I knew he was aware of what the contents held. I could hold out no more. I felt I had wallowed in this man's anguish far too long. I took a deep breath, drew my knife, and strode out from my hiding place. I was within about 10 yards when he clapped eyes on me. I stood still. He gaped at me in silence, and then very slowly bent down and grabbed up an available rock. He looked shaky and weak, and I knew if there was combat, I could take him quite easily. What must he be thinking? Return to the naval officer. By God, who on earth is this ruffian? Where did he come from? My first thoughts were to keep my wits about me. He looked like a scoundrel, a pirate of the sea. I figured he would have mates around. Maybe I could take him before being ganged up upon. I must not let him see how weak I am. Do you speak English? I said, in as strong a voice as I could muster. I sounded somewhat croaky and felt I looked frail and easy meat. The King's, he boomed, and I am in no mood for quarrelsome behaviour, so lest you drop that rock, I will cut you open like a sack of grain. Drop it! He was big and looked brawny, and I felt conscious that I probably looked frail and scrawny. So there it was, as plain as the nose on my face. I could surrender or fight. Either way, this rover would probably slay me. Deep from within, I managed to muster the vigour of a belligerent retort. I would rather go down fighting than heed a scourge of the seas. I motioned the rock at him with menace that undoubtedly looked pathetic. The pirate stood fast, studying me with a smirk about his face. He began to slowly walk towards me. I tensed and steadied myself. I had no fear, as death for me had worn out its terror. He stopped about 5 paces from me, and I could now clearly see his eroded and sea-worn features. His long lank hair was matted and greying, as was his full beard. He was well over my own 6 foot, and he appeared even stronger close up. He looked me up and down and began to chuckle. Scourge, am I? He said, in a controlled manner. You've never laid eyes on me before, yet you are now making a judgment upon me. That's very bad manners. Then he raised his voice. Not again will I repeat myself. Drop your rock, or I will slash your throat. And from the look of you, it won't be a difficult chore. Do as I say, and you may well live to see another day. He could probably do me in a fight on the best of occasions, and now I was without an ounce of strength. I had no chance, and he knew it. I felt certain he would have killed me by now if it was his intention, and in my dizzy and drained state, I would have performed a woeful display of fighting. My chances were extremely slight, if non-existent, so with humbling bitterness, I decided to submit myself, for now. I allowed the rock to drop to the sand. Good! 'Tis no disgrace. Even I, a scourge of the sea, may have done the same if I were in your position, he said, with more than a hint of cynicism. I've been watching you ever since you were washed up here on this island.